For our second session, we have our presenting partner, Optum, with a very interesting topic, which is making presence felt in virtual workplace. Our speakers for this session is Mr. Chris and Ms. Madhuri Raya. Chris has successfully led large IT transformational initiatives that help global companies achieve better business IT alignment. He started his journey with Infosys as Java developer, and after a decade, his quest to understand enterprises, businesses, took him to a global healthcare company, UHG. And Madhuri, who is Senior Director, Software Engineering, Optum Global Solutions. She leads the OGS technology portfolio for revenue cycle management business and is responsible for defining and executing the technical strategy for the same. She has worked across various industries, including automotive, security, and healthcare industries, and has filed 7 patents. To anchor the session from Optum, we have Anjali, who leads the Optum Global Solutions, Finance, and Accounting Operations team. Anjali's experience touches the areas of financial planning and analysis and finance and accounting in global shared services, environments, regional offices, and corporate offices around the world.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our very first ever virtual conference, WiT Spark, presented by Optum. I'm Anjali, and today we're going to be talking about a very important aspect that has come to light in this new world order. Our work world as we know it has changed significantly in the past few months. Despite all the hours that many of us may have spent in the boardroom back in 2008, 2009, planning the 2020 vision, nobody actually saw this coming. So with all of these changes, it's really imperative for us to know what it means and what are we going to do to make our presence felt in this virtual world. Culturally, we've been told that we need to only speak when we're spoken to. Now that is in our DNA. Do we need to really revamp our DNA? Let's hear all about it from our eminent speakers today, Madhuri and Chris. Madhuri and Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. My first question is actually to you, Chris. So let's start by understanding what do we actually mean when we say make your presence felt? Why is it so important? Well, make your presence felt in the virtual world. Why is it such an important topic or a critical topic, according to you? And what does it actually mean?
Thank you, Madhuri, for the warm introduction. Let me begin by saying, perhaps answering the second part of your question first, because that's, in my mind, the most important piece. And as we would all agree, work from home was something in the past, that was not broadly accepted, right? And I'm sure, of course, there were many reasons, like infrastructure could have been a reason. Collaboration or teamwork was seen as a limitation in the virtual world. Perhaps the most important reason that I believe in, or believed in rather, was about, whether we will ever be able to shut down the work from home. In the past, if you would walk into an office, I would expect myself to be totally shut off from home. And that's true. I'll talk a little bit about it. For example, I've never had emails on my phone, even till date. Thanks to the pandemic, I think the last 3-4 months have been extremely great in terms of learning, I would say. And in fact, my team throughput is the highest than ever before that I've seen. So perhaps, in a short run, this is all great. But if I wonder if work from home were to continue for long, is this sustainable? What are those other factors, that the organizations and individuals should start thinking to succeed in the new world? And a senior developer writes a story about how he was well regarded, by his manager, by his team, was putting together like a 10 to 12 hour at work every day, by his teammates, felt really important and what he was doing. And all of a sudden, one day, he notices that a new developer comes on board into the team, and slowly he would realize that the work getting drifted away. Somebody else is, all of a sudden become, more important, right? Now, this again, both these stories to me are really important because I think perhaps, the value that someone brings to table is not just about getting work done. There's more to it, and to me, it is about how you deliver is equally important. So that's, hopefully that gives you a little perspective on why this is so particularly relevant in this time. Now, at Pega, coming back to your first part of the question, I just want to narrate a few what we do at Pega. At Pega, we have a system of values and success behaviors that define our culture. Success behaviors particularly are all about how we perform the job and how we behave towards our clients, our colleagues, and teams. Now, if I were to think about it for a second to answer the first part of the question, I believe making presence felt in a virtual workplace is about exhibiting these success behaviors that organizations value the most, and in return, it helps you succeed and grow. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, actually, Chris. That was fantastic. I love how you say this is really about not so much about, not working, but really about how do you stop working because you can't draw the lines between work and home. That's a fantastic perspective. And it's refreshing to hear a leader actually speak about that. Thank you so much. My next question is to you, Madhuri. So what are the common barriers you think one faces when it comes to having a seat at the virtual table? And do you think some of these barriers are a result of stereotyping labels or misconceptions? And then how do we overcome it? So 3 parts to that question.
Sure. Thank you for having me, everyone. In a physical environment, much of what we learn from our colleagues is through observation. We see how they work, we see their attitudes, their expectations, and we get the meaning from their face expressions and body language. And when you work in a virtual environment, some of these visual cues are missing. And when it comes to even leaders, getting the key messages across to their employees who are new to the org or who they haven't seen in a long while is a challenge that they need to overcome. Some responds to a good storytelling and emotion, other wants to get to the point. And usually visual cues help you to gain this and go forward. These are just the physical barriers. Now, when we come to the barriers on a culturally or ethnically or all these things is a different one altogether. Linguistics influence on human relationships and conversations is significant. Language is a learned social behavior. So the cultural factors make a huge impact for a small thing like how long of a pause is acceptable in a call. Just to give you an example, one day my colleague called me quite upset that she felt that she's being excluded from an important brainstorming session. Now, this had me a bit puzzled because she's quite dynamic, always brings value to the table, and her teammates respect her a lot. Now, I was casually checking with the team, hey, how did the brainstorming session go? And they said it went fantastic. They were able to discuss, brainstorm, even on this virtual world, and able to get these results in place. Now, if I understand from my colleague, she was saying they're talking over each other. I can never get a chance to give my inputs. Otherwise, a very good employee able to input her points, she couldn't find the pause in the conversation. This seems simple, but if you see, she felt excluded and it has a lot of repercussion. So the cultural barriers are also significant. We need to keep an eye on it. And now, how do we overcome this? There are a variety of tools, very easy to use. I mean, it's amazing that how we are doing it. Just now, as even Krish mentioned, frankly, the last 3 months our productivity went up. But again, what Krish mentioned also, we have to see how does it work in the long. We need to keep an eye on it. While technology helps, we should also keep an eye on how is this communication going on. We consciously consider what to say when we are speaking, right? But we rarely think how to speak. How do we speak it? How do we start? And we should start doing that.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. Those were very, very useful tips. I'm just like making notes. I love how you say visual barriers and how you speak about the cultural barriers. And of course, things that we need to do to overcome some of these. So technology is a very good point you've actually alluded to. And that kind of takes me to my next question to you, Chris. So what are your thoughts on our readiness from a technology perspective? And given that this is a huge technology game now, what do you think are the new ways of working? I know this is probably a topic close to your heart.
Absolutely, Anjali. Thanks for asking that question. In fact, it's really, really important in the current times. In the past, I'm sure everyone would believe that, turning the direction of a big ship would perhaps take months or even years. I think the pandemic has taught something new, and many organizations have succeeded, transforming it perhaps in a few months. So, before I answer your question, I must admit that while most organizations have something called a business continuity plan, the pandemic has taught us something that, these organizations have not envisioned before, right? So we must recognize that all of us are going through some unique situation here, right? And especially the managers play a vital role in helping our employees, our staff, our individuals navigate this unprecedented times. Now, having said that, I'm pleased to see how organizations have embraced this change and evolved as fast as you can think. So let me talk about a few technology platforms or systems that were established at Pega, which of course enable some of this change. The first one that I want to go in with is the continuous feedback. And I'm sure most organizations have thought about or implemented in the past. How do we get away from these year-long periodic performance conversations, receiving continuous feedback? Now that's something is come up to be proving very, very helpful or handy, if you will. We've seen managers connecting with the individuals on a one-on-one basis, on a monthly basis, to talk about how they have been doing. It's less about performance, but it's more about how, as an individual, as a human entity, the organization, what's been happening with them. I think that's come up very, very handy, I would say. The second important thing that I want to talk about is at Pega what we call as CIC check-in chats. Now, these are monthly check-in chats, town halls, all hands, whatever you want to call, wherein the senior leadership of the company come together. And I'm talking about CEO, the CTO, the CIO, addressing the entire organization on a monthly basis. Now, it has helped us significantly in understanding where the company is headed, what's been the market trend, how are we trying to address those, and the support that we need from the individuals. So that's check-in chat for you. Let me talk a little bit about another great initiative that we have seen at Pega. It's called Billing Bridge. Now, let me come back to the name a little bit, but let me tell you what that is first. Building bridges is all about a forum where the employees get to put up their questions in terms of what's on their mind, and the rest of the organization gets to upvote and downvote. So, and the management caters the last 15 minutes of the check-in chat to address the top questions that came in through billing bridges. In one word, this is about the sentiment on the floor. And if the management gets to know about it, do something different and better, for the organization. So that's building. It's about building a bridge between the management and the employees. So that's the third one that I want to talk about. Well, there are a lot of others that perhaps I wouldn't have time here to discuss, but maybe in terms of engagement, there's been a lot of technology that we leveraged. My favorites are Mural. Mural is again a market platform that allows you to collaborate on business meetings. I would recommend you explore that. That's been really, really helpful to Pega. One of the things I want to talk about is Burn Along. How do you make sure employees are fit and healthy? Burn is an entity that Pega had partnered with and got the employees who can register themselves and their families and go through the virtual sessions to stay fit. So these are some of the examples that I can quote here, which really help from a technology standpoint. Technology is an enabler. I think there's a lot more that the organizations, that the teams, that the managers and individuals have to pick up. This really, really work for us. So those are my viewpoints, Anjali. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. I love how you articulate that the technology is only an enabler, and all of the things that you have actually spoken about, the upvoting and downvoting of ideas to gather the sentiment. I think it's probably the quickest and easiest way to figure out what's going on the floor. Thank you for sharing that. Madhuri, my next question is to you. You spoke a little bit, in your example or your story, you were talking about a brainstorming session where somebody felt excluded. So that kind of brings me to this topic of ideation. So ideation is such an important element in our culture, and innovation is such an important element in our culture. Given that you're from the healthcare industry, we are from the healthcare industry, to stay relevant, we need to continuously innovate. So what are your thoughts on innovation and ideation in this new world order? And how do we continue to stay impactful?
Anjali, I'm so glad you asked that question. I cannot emphasize how innovation, ideation is very vital. Culturally, they need to be baked in, even in the virtual workplace. It cannot be an afterthought. At Optum, innovation is one of our 5 core values, the others being integrity, performance, relationship, and we invest almost $3.6 billion annually on innovation. Especially in the current scenario, I think we cannot consider ideation or innovation as a luxury. We need to emphasize on it further. Just an example, as you mentioned, Optum being a healthcare company, last couple of months, I would say we had a double impact on us with COVID. Not only like every other company, we rushed to take care of our employees, set up processes, make sure the work from homes and all of it is working along. We also have to attend to our customers. For example, my products, 4 out of 5 US hospitals use our products. And our customers were reeling under the huge, tremendous pressure, the huge, tremendous influx of patients. And frankly, their systems, their processes are not catered towards it. And wherever you need previously an hourly updates of your dashboards, now they want it in seconds, in minutes. And Optum needed to provide those things, and the team needs to ideate fast. And team did it on time, right? They used all the virtual technical tools available to them. They did. Without innovation, our customers would have struggled, and frankly, we would have not have survived. And in fact, if you think about it, the interesting point is the last quarter, our engagement scores are one of the highest. And why wouldn't it, right? You did your life's best work in getting things done, being with your customers. That's why I'm saying it's imperative for leaders to keep the innovation and ideation on and going on continuously is the need of the hour. And remote ideation can be an effective tool, in fact. Leaders should also consider this asynchronous ideation. Synchronous ideation is our traditional ideation where people meet together, come up with ideas, contribute, go ahead. And asynchronous would not happen in a specific time for all the participants. Communication via collaboration would happen. It also provides sometimes time for the ideas to incubate. And frankly, it might be new, but we should be open and be very comfortable in this asynchronous ideation.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. I feel so proud when you talk about, how 4 out of 5 hospitals use our products. And this is the last quarter we've actually done our life's most important work. It feels great to be, not really in the front line, but to be a part of that front line that's actually doing our best today. So thank you for actually talking about that. And I really hope that we continue to innovate and all healthcare companies continue to innovate so that, we see the light at the end of the tunnel sooner than later. So, Chris, this is my next question is actually to you. Can you share your perspectives on some of these virtual platforms? You were talking about, again, you were talking about technology being an enabler, but we've seen, in fact, we're using some great virtual platforms as we speak. But what, in your experience, has been the best virtual platform that you've used? And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So if you're referring to if your question is about the technology platform, Madhuri, I think all of those that are mentioned previously, I think come together. It's probably hard for me to just single out one and say, hey, this has been the miracle mantra, if you will, right? But I think the important thing is to recognize that each of these have a significant contribution or a gap that it fills. And as managers and teams adopt them, I think you will see culture getting built out, if you will, right? Now, having said that, for nimble transformation, there are certain things that I would expect the teams and the managers and individuals do something different on the ground, which is perhaps much more than just the technology side of things. So let me emphasize a few of them, right? As managers, we need to recognize that the hierarchical structures are good in the world of stability. I don't think that's the status where we are today. So leaders must try and simplify the team structures, empower individuals to make those decisions and make lives easy for the rest of the organization. So that's something that I believe the managers need to do. The second thing that I would say is, of course, command and control style has long lost its mojo. But how can, as a leader, as a manager, how can you ensure that you foster an environment or culture where people strive to be creative without being chaotic? The individuals should perhaps embrace something called distributed leadership or nimble leadership, if you will. And what it means in simple terms is each one of us are accountable and responsible for that change and innovation at every level. I don't think we can sustain this model for long if you were to think that it's only the top brass that is responsible for innovation and rest of the organization are followers. I don't think that's something that we would like to even embrace. It's all about distributed leadership. Lastly, let me talk about, I know Madhuri has kind of shared a lot of interesting and best practices around what could we do as individuals, as teams. I have a few that I believe would make perhaps the great organizations and the best practices in this current world, right? The first one I want to talk a little bit about is the critical thinking. I believe it's really important for each one of us to practice critical thinking in the virtual workplace. And in simple terms, it's all about questioning the assumptions, reasoning through logic, and being willing to diversify your thought. I think that to me is critical thinking in simple terms. Second thing is about listening with empathy. Agreed? No, this is two-way street. It's not about the manager or an individual. It has to be a both. Hence, it's a two-way street for you to be empathetic for the team and people around you. Support with flexibility is another aspect I think we should all be embracing. Respect each other's time. Make sure you are not the only person having the time that you get into a meeting. It's important that you respect that others have a point of view and allow them to share those. Building trust perhaps is another one. And how do we stay socially engaged even when physically distant? I think that's the art that we all need to perhaps overcome and understand and embrace. And the last thing that I would say is engage in positive thinking. I'm sure there are a lot of things that each of us are going through at home, and it's not easy to stay separate from home and work or draw a line between these two. How do we make sure we get some headspace, personal time, free up our thoughts and stay positive throughout the day I think is going to be really, really important as we transform through the virtual world seamlessly.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was fantastic. I'm really glad that you've connected how we should transform and not just what technology can do for us. That really answers the question. I absolutely love your answer on distributed leadership. It's a very interesting thought, and I have to say, what you shared on critical thinking. That's probably the best definition I've heard. Thank you for that. I'm going to use that in some of my conversations going forward. Um, so, Madhuri, my question is actually to you, and this is probably, as a woman leader, as a parent. What I've heard and read very recently is that for the first time in history, for women, three of our physical spaces have come together, which is work, office, and school. And in all three, we play very significant roles. Chris, I don't mean to say that you don't. I'm just asking Madhuri that this is apparently a study of how women are now finding themselves in these three spots and trying to be in all three places at the same time. So, what is your take on that, and how do you think we should cope? As you know, well, I think it applies to both men and women. How should we cope where we're trying to do all of these three at the same time in the same physical space?
Yes, it's interesting times, isn't it, Anjali Rao? We need to have an understanding of the working environment, especially the leaders or the managers. Even organization need to understand and be mindful of the fact that the environment where your employees work might be different from your own, right? Uh, as you mentioned, all these three worlds collided for most of the women, and they're fighting. Every world is fighting for the space in one physical space, right? And it's very hard. And I think we should be mindful of the fact that a corporate world is encroaching into a home world, and then we should be okay with a dog barking in the back or a cupboard shutting sounds, and kids asking for snacks for that matter. And I think we all are in together, and then we take forward. And another one, when you come to inclusion, is again we need to understand the dynamics of the team too. It's very fragile. The relationships take some time, especially when you're not talking to each other. Take some time to build up, and we need to be patient about it. And when you have a new entry coming in, and we need to make an extra careful to make sure that he is included in, he or she. Constantly evaluation your communication tools. Please understand and think, ask ourselves a question. Are we including everyone? Is a better approach we can take? Is this the right tool? Am I getting the response from everybody? So we need to constantly evaluate our tools. It's not like we set up a tool and then we run with it. We need to evaluate, change if needed. I think that would be really helpful. And again, invest in the diversity programs. I'm sure many of the organizations do currently right now. And I think we should push it forward even when we are working virtually. At Optum, we have a strong I&D, Inclusion and Diversity program, for enabling women employees to navigate their way into the leadership, opportunities for specially able people. And we invest a lot of webinars on manager sensitization, unconscious bias. And this is very important. Even our CEO joined 550 other CEOs to affirm our commitment to learn and advance workplace inclusion and diversity. Like innovation, as we talked before, this must go on, and this is not something that, when things get better, we'll start it again. This is not the case, and this should be a part of it, and we should continue to run along with it.
Okay, Chris, my next question is actually to you, and this is, of course, in continuation with the topic at hand, women in technology. There are statistics that speaks about the contribution of women in technology to India's GDP. Unfortunately, it's a very small number. It's only 17%. So as a leader, and given that we are here to support this cause, can you tell us what we can do to improve this, and what organizations can do to kind of make that number look better?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Anjali. In fact, it's true that's a very small percentage of our GDP is actually contributed by women. a shockingly low number compared to countries, perhaps with same or equal level of economic activity, right? I think what we need to recognize is the longer the organizations wait to build a diverse workforce and inclusive culture, the harder it will get with time. So I think we need to do something in the moment, in the time that we are in today. A few things that come to my mind. The first thing is, how do you start seeding and practicing that need to bring in an equal or bridge the gender gap today at the bottom of the pyramid? Start looking at your hiring or recruitment opportunities and emphasize on bringing equal diverse workforce, if you will. Something that I've been very closely monitoring for my own team, and with pride I would say today, we are probably the best in terms of the diversity, gender diversity, if you will. But that's not easy. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we made conscious attempts to bring in workforce at equal percentages, 50-50, nothing lower, nothing higher. That's one thing that we've been doing at the entry level. Another thing that we do at lateral hiring is make sure that there is enough interest as well as profiles that are being sourced in terms of gender diversity. So it is definitely a must to have a few women profiles as well in every opportunity that shows up. So that's something we have been consciously doing. But you're right, I don't think the numbers are at where we would like to, right? I mean, the numbers that I've seen typically in many organizations, they're in the range of 30-35 percentages at junior levels, and it drops to a single digit as soon as you see at levels of leadership. I think for us to be successful at leadership levels, you also need to reinforce some leaders, role models, if you will, where women can look up to and pursue that. Because majority of the reasons that I have seen in women not being in those positions at senior levels is because it's important to understand what good them in their personal lives. A lot of times it's about having a seat at the table. If it is hard for somebody to choose between a personal life and a professional life, and especially for a woman, and Madhuri talked about a little bit in the earlier questions, they're not really doing one job. They're perhaps doing like 3 to 4 jobs every single day. How do you sustain a model like that is where I believe organizations and male leaders in the organization can support, and try to help out the women workforce so that they can pick up those positions as get into those senior, leadership roles. Those are the areas that I think would be helpful to improve that over a period of time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Madhuri, on the same note, Chris actually alluded to this. This is the famous leaky pipeline that we keep talking about. So we start, at the entry level, we apparently in India, we have 34% of our professionals at the entry level are women, as compared to 30%, that's the global number. And then 51% are hires at the entry level. 34% are women in technology as compared to 30% globally. 51% is our entry level. 25% is at the managerial level in India. This compares to 38% globally. So clearly you can see, we bring in more people than the rest of the world, but then something happens to our women when they get to managerial positions. And then globally, 6% of the C-suite positions are occupied by women. In India, this is less than 1%. So it drops again significantly. So what do you think we can do to help this? Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing or the organization is doing to support this?
Sure. It is a leaky pipeline, isn't it? It's a significant leak we're seeing here. While we're doing good from our entry level compared to the rest of the globe, there's significant loss happening on the way. And this is how I feel. As the women go to their mid-careers, And that's the same time, more often than not, it coincides with their, them bringing up their own family, starting their own family. And that is where we see a huge gap and getting them back, attracting them back to the workspace. And Chris rightly pointed out before that from a leadership, from an organization point of view, we also need to provide them a seamless way of, inviting them back into the workforce, be it reskilling, upskilling them, providing them, returnship so that they can come back at the same level. More often than not, they will, even if they want to come back to workforce, they will go back to the entry level, which isn't fair, neither for the women, nor for the industry to begin with. And I think these are the ones that's very important the organization will look at. Optum, we are collaborating with WiT, and from a STEM program, encouraging girls and women to take up the technology and technology-enabled ones. And also working on things like return to work, providing returnships so that they can seamlessly get back to the work. And I think this would help us tremendously to plug in this leaky pipeline. And as you mentioned, Anjali, I think sometime I believe it would be in October. We're going to have a career fair, especially for women who are coming back to the workforce. This career fair and includes what we call a prep fair, provides all the supporting services like resume building, strength finding, even mock interviews, so that to facilitate women, make them confident to come back into the workspace. I think all organizations should look into it, and as an industry as a whole, we need to plug this hole immediately.
Fantastic answer on that, Madhuri. Thank you so much. My last question, actually, and this is for both of you. Both of you are very successful in your careers, and I'm sure you've heard this question many times before. What is your success mantra? Who wants to go first?
I can take it.
Go ahead, Madhuri.
I'll make it short and sweet. I believe the first mantra for me is be you, be authentic, right? You don't need to copy some other to follow and gain success. You can bring value being by yourself, and you got to let go of an imposter syndrome. That's very important for me, because you bring your life's best work when you be authentic. The second one is build a support structure around you. Make your life partner your real partner in your own career. Ask for help. Today, I asked my son help saying that I need this room, right? And I need this, and please take your meeting in elsewhere. It's okay. You talk, you make decisions, and you build a support structure around you. It's don't be afraid to ask for help. And frankly, the way I am here, I think it's a product of many, many mentors I have. So please be a mentee, and in the same time, try to give it back. Once you can also be a mentor for some upcoming women or upcoming leader and help them out. And again, I would kick out the superwoman syndrome here. You should always ask for help. And the third one is make your own career timeline. If somebody says that you need to be promoted in XXX years, well, ignore that. Make your own career timeline and define your own success. It's all that matters, not somebody else's definition. It's your own definition. That's it. All those three mantras, Anjali.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madhuri. Chris.
I like what Madhuri talked about there. So let me reinforce one point in there. And before I talk about my successful or mantras for success, leading with empathy and flexibility. I think, given the situation you're into, I think this is a time for us to be exceedingly a human leader, if you will. If you go past the empathy and just focus on the job, perhaps that will lead into other kind of issues. So pay attention to that with empathy and flexibility. I think that's the most important thing for all of us. Let me go back to the success mantras. There are perhaps many. I'd like to, talk about a few of them, 3 to 4 of them. The first one that I would say has helped me significantly in my career, in my life, is all about, focusing on the value that you want, bring to the table in everything that you do, whether it is development project or a role that you're into, whether you're a coding, whether you're program managing, whether you're building a strategy. I think you need to look at it from a different lens. If there was another person, another leader that would have looked at it, what would that individual or leader have different from what you've done? I think that's probably going to lead into spaces where you have not thought about in the past. So think about your value that you bring to the table. And I like what Madhavi said. Don't be I'm sure all of us have something that we can add value to. So think about it. Second thing I've always practiced, and I think it's close to my heart, is about creativity and imagination. In fact, I believe that's what differentiates a few from the many. So think about it. One easy way to bring in creativity at work is about practicing critical thinking. Going back to what I said before, that could help you think differently. The third one I would say is practice these success behaviors. I talked about it briefly in my first part of the session today. It's about how we work together and how we deliver the work. And it's equally important, if not more, than what we actually deliver. Think about it. There are a few areas that you might want to see how you want to handle this piece. I would leave you with a few thoughts. For example, accountability with transparency, or excellence with urgency. How do you demonstrate the sense of urgency at work? How do you collaborate with alignment? A lot of times between conflicting or arguments is something that you need to avoid, but there's something called a constructive conflict. That's equally important. So how do you demonstrate that? And of course, the last piece that I said, leading with empathy. I think these are some of the success behaviors I believe are really important to what we do day in and day out. And the last thing, I'm sure there'll be times in life where you probably want to quit. Please don't. Keep at it. Get this on the table. Don't give up. I think even in those difficult times, there's a learning for all of us. So embrace that as you go through your journey. That's about it, Anjali, from my end.
Fantastic session. Thank you both. This has been absolutely delightful and a great learning experience for me. I'm sure everybody who's listening in will share the same sentiment. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Madhuri. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, Madhuri, and Anjali, for such an insight.